468 and 469. Will the clerk read the title of those two bills, please?
Bill number 160468, an ordinance amending Title IV of the Philadelphia Building Construction and Occupancy Code, Subcode A, the Philadelphia Administrative Code of the Philadelphia Code, by revising signage requirements relating to construction and demolition projects, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 160469, an ordinance amending Title IV of the Building Construction and Occupancy Code, Subcode A, the Philadelphia Administrative Code of the Philadelphia Code, by revising requirements relating to construction and demolition projects, including the expiration of permits, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Before the commissioner starts, I introduced these two bills, and I really appreciate the collaboration of the Department of Licenses and Inspections and their willingness to work with the BIA and others. These are minor amendments that clearly do not limit the ability of licenses and inspections to do what they initially intended to do, which was protect the public safety around demolition sites. So with that, I'll let the commissioner.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman or Chairwoman Quiñones-Sánchez and members of the Committee on Licenses and Inspections. What's that? We're waiting on this? All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, excuse me a second. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry about that. We have some bill confusion. I have 468. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Quiñones-Sánchez and members of the Committee on Licenses and Inspections. My name is Rebecca Swanson. I am the Planning Director for the Department of Licenses and Inspections. Today, I'm here to provide testimony on Bill number 160468, which, if enacted, would amend the Philadelphia Administrative Code by revising signage requirements for certain construction and demolition projects. Construction and demolition projects are required to maintain certain signage containing specific information about the project on site. Major buildings, which is defined as more than 3 stories in height or 10,000 square feet, must display a large project information panel, while all other buildings must display a smaller project information sign. The essential information to be included on both signs is the same. The intent of this requirement was to distinguish large projects such as commercial construction and the construction of multiple residential units from smaller residential and mixed-use projects, and require that the large projects display a larger sign appropriate for the size of the construction site. 1- and 2-family residential construction is not thought of as a large project in this sense, but because most new residential construction exceeds 3 stories, they are by definition major buildings and therefore must display the large project information panel. The department believes that construction and demolition projects consisting of fewer than 3 1- or 2-family dwellings should not be considered major buildings for the purposes of the sign requirement, and that it is more appropriate to require the smaller, but still fully informative project information sign for these projects. These signs are more likely to fit on the site and provide more than sufficient notice to the community as to the particulars of the project. Larger residential projects that include 3 or more 1- or 2-family dwellings would still be considered major buildings because of the size of the project site and would still require the project information panel. The department supports this bill and is prepared to enforce its provisions should it become law. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the department's testimony. Happy to answer any questions at this time.
I'm going to have you read 469, and then I'm going to have a representative from BIA here, and then.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Quiñones-Sánchez and members of the Committee on Licenses and Inspections. My name is Rebecca Swanson. I'm the Planning Director for the Department of Licenses and Inspections. Today, I'm here to provide testimony on Bill number 160469, which, if enacted, would amend the Philadelphia Administrative Code by revising requirements related to the expiration of demolition permits. Under the current code, all building permits become invalid if the permitted work does not begin within 6 months of the issuance of the permit, and no extension is requested through the formal extension procedure, which allows for 1 6-month extension at the discretion of the department. The exception to this is demolition permits, which become invalid if the permitted work does not begin within 45 days of the issuance of the permit, or an extension, which is limited to 30 days, is not requested. This bill would change this expiration date for demolition permits for buildings not classified as imminently dangerous from 45 days from issuance to 6 months from issuance, bringing it in line with the expiration time frame for all other building permits. It would also afford demolition permits the same 6-month extension period as all other building permits. The department believes that this change is necessary in order to afford demolition contractors the opportunity to address outstanding issues with the property, including the evacuation of occupants, as well as to afford the general contractor or property owner time to retain a new demolition contractor if desired after the permit is issued. This change does not affect permits for the demolition of imminently dangerous buildings. Those demolitions must still begin within 10 days of the issuance of the permit. It also does not affect the requirements that a demolition not be suspended or abandoned once started. The department supports this bill and is prepared to enforce its provisions should it become law. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the department's testimony. Happy to answer any questions at this time.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Emmons, and I'm the president of the Building Industry Association of Philadelphia. The BIA represents the Philadelphia region's residential home builders, contractors, and suppliers. We would like to thank the chair and the members of the committee for the opportunity to testify before you today. And we especially want to thank Councilwoman Sanchez for introducing bill numbers 160468 and 160469 at the BIA's request. These two bills amend the city's building construction code, making changes in terms of signage requirements and permit length that will serve to simplify and streamline construction in Philadelphia. Bill number 160469 changes the length of time for demolition permit expiration. Under the current code, once a permit is issued by L&I, the developer has 60 days to pick up the permit before it lapses. Then once the demolition permit is picked up from L&I, the developer has 45 days to begin work before the permit expires, with the option to request one single 30-day extension from L&I on this permit. This limited length of time and delays in the L&I approval process often make it difficult to safely begin demolition work before the permit expires, creating a difficult and time-consuming process for the developer. This bill would extend the length of time before a demolition permit expires to 6 months from the date it is picked up from L&I. This brings the permit length for demolition projects in line with other city permits and elsewhere in the state, simplifying the process for everyone involved. It is important to also note that this does not impact any new safety regulations put in place by council over the last year, as it only applies to discretionary demolition, not L&I mandated demolition of dangerous structures that have different and much shorter time frames. Bill number 160468 revises signage requirements related to construction and demolition projects by exempting small one-family and two-family dwelling projects from the signage requirements that apply to construction, alteration, or demolition of major buildings. This change will help smaller developers working on residential projects in the city intended for one and two families, as long as the project consists of two or less one-family or two-family dwellings. The developer can follow the signage requirements for smaller projects instead of the stricter requirements for major buildings. The BIA supports bills number 160468 and 160469, and we encourage the committee to report these bills out with a favorable recommendation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let the chair recognize that Councilman Tollenberger and Councilman Squilla have now joined the panel. Anybody here to testify on either one of these two bills? Seeing none, thank you. The clerk will now read the title of bill. We're finished now, Brian. You good?
What's that?
We're finished. You're good.
Okay.
We're going to move to bill 160115. I know that the bill sponsor, Councilwoman Bass, is here. I want to recognize her for opening comments after the clerk has read the title of the bill.
Bill number 160115, an ordinance amending Title IX of the Philadelphia Code entitled Regulation of Businesses, Trades, and Professions by creating a new chapter to hold business owners responsible for nuisance behavior occurring on the business premises and within the immediate vicinity of the business, to provide for enforcement and penalties, and to provide for business owner meetings with registered community organizations with respect to certain appeals, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to start out by thanking the members of the Committee on Licenses and Inspections, and in particular the bill's co-sponsors, Council members Jones, Squilla, and Blackwell. And I also want to recognize Committee Chair Maria Quiñones-Sánchez for her and her staff's assistance in fine-tuning amendments. This was truly a collective effort, and I would be remiss if I didn't also thank the Law Department and Commissioner Perry for their invaluable assistance. And one of the things about this bill is really, the aim is to get at a problem that has been existing in many of our neighborhoods for a very long time. It's been unaddressed in some areas, it's unheard of, and the behavior that we face by some of our businesses is truly outrageous. There are businesses that are quote-unquote called stop-and-go businesses. There are businesses that are not stop-and-goes, but otherwise are not good businesses, operators in the neighborhoods in which they operate. And we all know that we need good businesses to keep our neighborhoods vibrant. We need them to keep our neighborhoods thriving. And unfortunately, some of the businesses that we have in our communities do not act as model members of the community. This bill comes as a result of many years of community members trying to get our government to be responsive to the concerns of nuisance behavior in and around businesses. That the business does not only adequately address such issues as loitering, illegal consumption of alcoholic beverages, illegal drug activity, and so much more, it actually gives L&I and the community a vehicle to engage these businesses or have them shut down. And I want to add on here, often I've heard from some businesses, well, I can't control what happens on my sidewalk. I can't control what happens outside of my business. But I'm responsible, Cindy Bass is responsible for what happens on her sidewalk for the property that she owns. And business owners are not to be held at any different standard. I am grateful for the diverse support for this bill, not only from the administration, but from the Pennsylvania Restaurant Association and even the City of Chicago and their Department of Business and Regulatory Affairs, which passed similar legislation in place since 2007. And so in conclusion, I am asking for your approval of the amended version of this bill, number 160115, with a suspension of the rules so as to permit first reading at our next council session. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair would recognize Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to applaud the prime sponsor of this legislation as Chair of Public Safety. There are statistics that support this bill. Whether you look at some of the areas in my district where crime correlates with the location of some of these stores.
Yes.
And victims and witnesses find themselves at a crossroads at that store where they're on their own. Mm-hmm. I remember video of an elderly man being drop-kicked in the back and his meager change taken from him by a young ruffian. I remember and see a lot of times young men take advantage of merchants and force them to passively participate in their criminal activity by letting them hide things, by letting them stand in shelter in the cold. This is a problem, and I applaud you for making folks step up and take responsibility for the space that they live in. Yes. And I just want to also piggyback and say that I just sent a letter to the mayor requesting on those high incidence corridors where these occurrences happen, that they get prioritized for surveillance cameras.
Yes.
That in addition to the legislation that holds them responsible, that we as a municipality take some initiative to make sure those corridors are covered. 27th and Allegheny comes to mind. It took us in the last administration 4 years to get cameras. Mm-hmm. Now, is it a panacea? No. And that's why this legislation is so important. Thank you, Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Councilman. And the only other thing I did want to add is I wanted to thank my staff, for Patrick Jones, who really worked very, very hard on this piece of legislation. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I will add, as Councilman Jones was talking about it, you know, here in the city, we make investments on facade improvements so people can make their businesses more attractive, and windows and all the necessary things. We have tax credit programs for cameras, which you spoke about. We invest in our corridor support, and we've allowed certain activities to happen around some of these corridors because we want businesses, particularly good businesses, to thrive. It is unfortunate that we get to these places where, you know, everybody wants to point the finger. We all know the amount of time that police and L&I have to spend using our limited tools to get bad actors to behave well. And we hope that this becomes another tool in the toolbox so that we can protect people. I had a recent death on Wyoming Avenue from a young person, a 17-year-old that was in a social private club. He shouldn't have been there. It had been reported. We've had problems. The police was on top of it. And I just hope that by us saying to folks, everybody is somewhat responsible for this stuff, that we can prevent those types of activities. You know, I like the barbershops, but it's not a liquor store. I know for a fact I have many of them on my corridors that, you know, it's 11 o'clock at night, and I know the men now do these weekly cleanups and stuff, but, you know, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock for a barbershop to be open should not be acceptable. And even though commercial corridors don't have a lot of residential, we know they become a nuisance. So I also want to thank the bill sponsor and for her willingness to allow our office to work so that it can become the tool that we need in our district but all over the city. So with that, I want to thank the commissioner and his team for working with us on that and allow him to testify. Commissioner.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Quiñones-Sánchez and members of the Committee on Licenses and Inspections. I am David Perry, Commissioner of the Department of Licenses and Inspections. Today I'm here to provide testimony on Bill number 160115 as proposed to be amended, which, if enacted, will amend Title IX of the Philadelphia Code by establishing a separate offense for businesses that are repeatedly found to be engaged in or responsible for nuisance behavior. The department thanks the sponsor, Councilwoman Bass, and her staff for their tireless work on this bill. We support this bill and share Council's goal of holding businesses accountable for nuisance behavior that affects the quality of life in our neighborhoods. There is a citywide problem with businesses that consistently engage in nuisance behavior and/or promote or are responsible for nuisance behavior in or near their businesses that negatively affect the health, safety, and welfare of residents in the surrounding community. Sometimes these behaviors are crimes, such as prostitution or drug activity, and other times these behaviors are quality of life issues, such as littering and the parking of vehicles on the sidewalk. Either way, these behaviors have a serious impact on the community and must be addressed. The department currently has no authority under the Philadelphia Code to address these chronic nuisance businesses absent a separate fire, property maintenance, or zoning code violation. While violations of certain life safety provisions of these codes can lead the department to issue an order of intent to cease operations or an order to cease operations to a business, chronic nuisance activity in and of itself does not warrant similar action. Therefore, the department has no direct ability to require that businesses that repeatedly are involved in nuisance behavior take steps to remediate the behavior or face closure. This bill gives the department the authority to address these businesses by establishing chronic nuisance behavior as a code violation for which the penalty can be a cease operations order issued by the department. For a building to be classified as a chronic nuisance, it must receive a violation notice or citation from the Philadelphia Police Department, L&I, the Health Department, or other city agency for nuisance behavior occurring in or around the premises of the business more than 3 times in 60 days or 7 times in a year. If a business reaches this violation threshold, the agency that issued the violations will inform the department via a manual referral process currently and a potential automated electronic referral system in the future that the business may qualify as a chronic nuisance under this code section. The department may then, based upon the referral and an independent investigation, inform the business owner that it has been deemed a chronic nuisance and issue a notice of intent to cease operations of the business. After receiving the department's notice of its intent to cease the operations of the business owner has the opportunity to meet with the department to enter into a plan to remediate the identified nuisance behaviors. The owner must contact the department within 5 days of the receipt of the notice of the intent to cease and schedule an administrative proceeding with the department. At that proceeding, the business owner will have the opportunity to demonstrate that appropriate measures have already been taken to prevent future reoccurrence of the underlying nuisance behavior. The owner will also have the option to enter in a nuisance abatement plan with the department through which the owner agrees to take specific action to reduce or prevent reoccurrences of the nuisance behaviors. This nuisance abatement plan would be negotiated with the department and would include remediation specific to the underlying behaviors, such as the installation of security cameras to address loitering or engaging in ongoing communication with the police department to address criminal activity. When determining the appropriate remedial measures to be included in the nuisance abatement plan, the department may consider written testimony of nearby residents and community members with a knowledge of the nuisance behavior at the business or of remedial measures being taken. If a nuisance abatement plan is agreed upon, the department would continue to monitor the business to ensure that the agreed upon remedial measures are being taken. The business owner does not contact the department within 5 days of the receipt of the notice of intent to cease operations, or if the business owner does not contact the department but does contact the department but is unwilling or unable to demonstrate any remedial action or enter into a nuisance abatement plan, the department may proceed with the issuance of a cease operations order. A cease operations order would effectively bar the business from operating in any capacity until such time as the business is considered to have remediated the violation. The business owner, as always, retains the right to appeal the notice of the intent to cease operations or the order to cease operations to the Board of Licenses and Inspection Review or the Court of Common Pleas. We believe that the additional authority given to the department to cease the operations of chronic nuisance businesses will allow us to better hold business owners accountable for what goes on in or around their property. This in turn will create safer and more livable communities for all city residents. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the department's testimony on Bill number 160115. I am happy to answer any questions at this time.
Have any questions for the commissioner?
No, I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank the commissioner again and L&I for their strong support of this bill and for other anti-nuisance blight behavior that has been occurring throughout the city with the donation bins and all of those sorts of things that he has really stepped up and paid attention to and addressing our neighborhoods to make our city better. So I really do want to thank you for all that you've done, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Dahl.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and good afternoon, Commissioner. A question just on the technicality of it. The adequate remedial measures, how do you go about measuring those, if they've taken those proper measures? How is your department going to measure that?
Well, it depends on the exact plan that the specific business would propose. For instance, maybe the behavior is related to staying open late at night. If the business agrees to close at an earlier hour, that's something that we can easily monitor and enforce. It could be the installation of security cameras. That's a physical improvement to the premises that, again, is easily inspected and can be enforced by the department.
The other comment that was under section 9, 4403, I think it is, paragraph 2. We're giving the owner 5 days, and I understand why, because we want it fixed. But can we, as an L&I department or city, handle that kind of a issuance of the notice of intent to cease operations to schedule a review hearing in like 5 days? Are we able to accommodate that?
Well, that section would require the business owner to notify us, and as long as the business owner notifies us within the 5 days, we will then schedule a hearing at the mutual convenience of both the department and the business owner. So it may be a week or maybe 2 weeks later, depending upon what the schedules are and what the specific issues may be. But we're willing to work with the business owner. We want to see that they step up, acknowledge the fact that we've issued this intent to cease, and that they're serious about working with us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would those provisions also include things like already existing things on the law, like when a store covers more than 50% of their window space in order to provide cover, often, for illegal transactions in that space? Will this ordinance kind of address that in conjunction?
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect with some of these businesses. It's not specifically listed as a particular nuisance. We would have to look at that probably from a zoning perspective in terms of the amount and coverage of signage that would appear at a given business.
So the intent of this is to say, to not put anybody out of business, but it is for them to be good neighbors. If I can speak for as a co-sponsor on this, my intent was to make sure that we take into account the existing laws that we already have, and then take the initial step to say, if somebody's beating the crap out of somebody in front of your spot, and you A, decide to not tell anybody, B, not make an anonymous call to any of the 5 tip lines, that after a while, and every other week, we're coming to that site. What are the measures you're going to take to try to safeguard the voters, customers, taxpayers that come to your establishment, and that to move that needle a little in the right direction, to say that no, you don't have a right to allow your business to be the conduit for bad criminal activity. And when I tell you that senior citizens are afraid to go to stores, that's a reality that a lot of neighborhoods find themselves in, because the operators feel like, well, it's not my problem. It's not my business to get involved in any kind of way. And no, I don't want to legislate good citizenship, but I'll be doggone if we let them, in addition, get away with all these other things, selling loosies, selling liquor by the drink, doing those things that create the environment that these crimes happen in. And it shouldn't be legislated by zip code. It should be uniformed. That if I can't get away with that in Chestnut Hill, which is a fine neighborhood in the 8th district, it shouldn't happen at 27th and Allegheny either.
You're exactly correct, Councilman. 2 things. The purpose is to change behavior and to get a positive outcome in terms of having these administrative hearings. And then in addition, if in fact the windows are blocked up and that's leading folks to behave in a less than suitable manner inside the business, then the remediation could be, well, open up all your windows, make sure they're clear, make sure people can see and in and out, because more eyes that you have on any given situation out there, the more safe the situation becomes, and the more comfortable people will feel either being in the store or out on the street.
Thank you. I know that again, we can't legislate for the bad guys. Bad actors are bad actors. But I think to the extent that, and that's what I appreciate around the amendments around, again, the activity we'd like to see is we want to encourage people put up cameras. We want to encourage them to be part of their community-based organizations. We want to encourage them to be participants of the card or businesses association. So there's a lot of different options we give folks if they feel that they are wrongly being targeted for their behavior. There's a lot of different ways people can demonstrate that they're trying to be a better business provider. I think that you know, we don't want to set up false expectations to the community about what we can and cannot do, but clearly the business models that some of the businesses have, you know, it's a conversation I've had with the Chinese Restaurant Association. You know, when you start with a bulletproof piece, you've changed your model around what you allow in your office. I mean, in your place of business, and we want people to be safe, but it's your setup that allows certain things to continue to happen. So I think we want businesses that are friendly to the customers and to the neighborhood, and I think that's where we're trying to get. So I appreciate it. Councilwoman, did you have something else to add to that?
Well, you know, I just wanted to add on to a point that Councilman Jones was making about folks being afraid to go to the store, go near the store. And as a matter of fact, we had a meeting, it just brought to mind a meeting that we had in the community with Thea Martin, who I acknowledge is here. And one of the seniors at the meeting said how she, when she would get off of the bus to go home, she would walk a full block to avoid having contact with the establishment or anyone who was at the establishment. She would go completely out of her way to avoid any sort of contact because of what was happening in these locations. And we just can't have it. And if we're going to keep it real, as they say, then we know that these businesses really only operate in this fashion, have this model in particular neighborhoods. They really only operate primarily, you know, in neighborhoods that are of color, that are primarily, you know, there's a high concentration of poverty, and there's a feeling that we can go in and do anything that we want to do. And so, again, I just thank you for stepping up and saying that that's not acceptable, that the quality of life of the residents of those neighborhoods really could be improved by what the stores decide their model is going to be. So just wanted to mention that.
Well, thank you. For the record, I am going to leave the rest of the hearing to my Vice Chair, Councilman Alan Dahm, and he's going to be fine. But thank you very much. And I'm going to, if there's no other questions for the commissioner, I'm going to release the commissioner because I'm sure he's busy and has other stuff to do. The rest of the panel that is scheduled to testify, for the record, Bill 160245 has been held by the bill sponsor. The next panel is Thea Martin Willing and Ingrid Shepard. For the record, Melissa Bova from the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lounging Association has written testimony in our packets, and Barbara Grizel, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection from the City of Chicago, has also submitted written testimony. So we will now hear from our next panel of Thea Martin Milling, Ingrid Shepard. If there's anyone else scheduled or who wants to speak on this bill, they should prepare after this next panel. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
They set it up for you.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Quiñones, who had to leave, and to Mr. Alan Dahm and all the members of the Committee on Licenses and Inspections, and a special good afternoon to my City Councilwoman, Cindy Bass. My name is Thera Martin Milling, and I'm the North 22nd Street Business Corridor Manager. I also want to acknowledge the fact that Mr. Charles Karn is here. He's the 13th Ward Chairman, and Doris Williford is here. She's the President of the Community Action Group. And these are just two of a number of organizations that came together with the North 22nd Street Business Association recently to hold a meeting with the Asian American Licensed Beverage Business Association to talk about our concerns with some of the businesses along our business corridor. Now, I also work for the Allegheny West Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization headed by Mr. Ronald E. Hinton Jr. Our goal is to support businesses that operate in our service area of North Philadelphia and to promote economic development, jobs, and community strategic planning. When you look at North 22nd Street Business Corridor, what you see is 110 businesses opening and operating every day, and sometimes with a lot of challenges facing store owners. One of the challenges is trying to have a business corridor that is attractive, that will make people want to shop where we are. If you have a business corridor that is constantly littered with trash and you have people loitering outside in front of certain businesses, and worse yet, some people who will relieve themselves outside on the side of certain businesses, that is totally unacceptable. That is why we feel that the Responsible Business Operation Bill 160115 is critical to be passed. While we respect the fact that there are well-meaning business owners along the North 22nd Street Business Corridor who come out and sweep and clean in front of their businesses every day, there are still others yet who you never see cleaning, never see them washing down their windows, never see them sweeping out on the sidewalk in front of their businesses, and never see them trying to move customers along who may choose to hang out outside in front of their businesses. We need all business owners to step up and take care of cleaning outside and inside their businesses. When a person walks into a clean, well-kept business, that sends a message to shoppers and customers that you respect them, you care about them. All business owners should want to send that kind of a positive message to would-be shoppers. Overall, it will make our shopping district citywide look better. Once all business owners come into compliance with cleaning up in front of their businesses, complying with all city rules and regulations that have to do with putting trash out properly, recycling properly, and making for sure that people in front of your businesses conduct themselves properly. All of this can add up to a nice-looking business corridor or shopping district. Or it can be one that will get a failing mark were city inspections given on cleanliness or neatness of a business location. The North 22nd Street Business Association appreciates having a wide variety of businesses along our business corridor. That's a good thing. We want to have a variety of businesses on our corridor so that North 22nd Street has something for everyone. However, the main kinds of businesses that we seem to need to work with the most to get them up to par for standards we want to carry out in Philadelphia are the businesses known as stop and goes that sell the beer and the malt liquor and the wine coolers and some that even sell liquor. And also businesses that sell food. They seem to need more monitoring also. Granted, it might not always be the fault of the owner of a business establishment that trash is out in front of their business or that people choose to loiter outside in front of their business, but it is the responsibility of the owner to tell people they're not allowed to hang out in front of an establishment, but for so long. And if a business owner has swept in front of their store and 30 minutes later a strong wind comes along and blows more trash in front of their store, guess what? We understand that business owners are still responsible for sweeping it up. It may be annoying. On a busy workday, it may be more than annoying. But the bottom line is the responsibility still falls on the shoulders of the business owner, and they have to be held accountable if we ever want all of our business corridors in the city of Philadelphia to look as good as Germantown Avenue in Chestnut Hill or Main Street in Manayunk, for example. The 22nd Street Business Corridor is a melting pot of nationalities who come together at our business association meetings to work in sync with each other. We have Hispanic business owners, Arabic business owners, African business owners, African American business owners, Asians, and even a couple Italian business owners still on 22nd Street. When it comes to the stop and goes along our corridor, of which we have 4, they are all owned by Asian Americans. Recently, the Business Association, as I noted earlier, met with the president of the Asian American Licensed Beverage Association, ALBA, and some of their members to discuss concerns we have about the stop and goes along North 22nd Street and in the immediate area, about their lack of cleanliness, loitering, and people urinating outside on the sides of their buildings. Adam Zhu, president of the Asian American Licensed Beverage Association, has made a commitment to Stop and Goes that are members of his organization will work by a new set of standards and mandates that his organization has come up with to become better neighbors to other businesses and to become better neighbors to the community. And we believe that's a great step forward, but we understand that all Stop and Goes are not members of the Asian American Licensed Beverage Association. And it is those Stop and Go owners who most of all need to clean up and fix up their businesses and clean up their act. That's a further reason why the North 22nd Street Business Association and the Allegheny West Foundation feels the city needs a new law put into place that has more teeth to it, that can put business owners on the hot seat, so to speak, if they don't keep their businesses clean and neat. Getting business owners to take better care of what their business looks like and what the sidewalks look like outside in front of their businesses is more than a notion. We understand that. We get it. But we believe positive change can start with the mindset of the people who live near or on business corridors, and it also has to start with the business owners themselves and their staff. The business owners have to step up to their plate and do their part to help keep our streets clean. We cannot and should not depend on the City of Philadelphia Sanitation Department to do all of the work for us. A part of being in business is cleaning up your business, and so the North 22nd Street Business Association and the Allegheny West Foundation, we are in full support of the Responsible Business Operations Bill getting passed into law. I want to thank you for this opportunity to provide this testimony today, and if you have any questions for me, I will try to answer them now.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
The next person, okay. The next person, I guess, is Ingrid Shepard.
I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, members.
Can you identify yourself for the record?
Yes, my name is Ingrid Shepard, and I am the board president of the Germantown Special Services District. Good afternoon, members of City Council. It is my pleasure to speak before you today on behalf of the Germantown Special Services District as the president of the board. I am here to voice my support for the proposed amendments to Bill number 160115 that seek to further define what a nuisance business is, identify remedies and assistance for those businesses to better serve and interact with their neighbors in the community, and to clearly state the consequences for businesses that choose to ignore repeated requests and warnings to clean up their own behavior and to monitor the activities of their customers that are directly related to their business and on their property. These amendments are needed because a community and its business district are only as strong, vibrant, and mutually beneficial to each other when all involved are good neighbors and stewards of their properties and responsibilities. Nuisance businesses have a hand in deterring other businesses from coming into a community, which has a direct effect on employment opportunities for neighboring residents. Nuisance businesses are often the center of drug and criminal activity, which keeps away potential shoppers from business corridors and drives down economic activity. Nuisance businesses that do not follow the rules and regulations of the city and all of the departments that oversee it create an additional barrier to physically cleaning up neighborhoods and business districts and help cause communities to slide into decline. For a neighborhood like Germantown and its central business corridor, these proposed amendments would greatly help in revitalizing the community and stimulating economic growth. I urge members of City Council to support and approve these amendments.
Thank you both for your testimony. The chair would like to recognize Councilman Jones.
Well, thank you both for your testimony, and it's truly appreciated. I can tell you had a long history in communications. You flowed through that, did not pause. It was truly a professional presentation, and yours very sincere as to what the urgency is, and I thank you both for it. I just want members of the committee to understand that there's a correlation, almost like the broken window theory. When little things happen, bigger things tend to happen too. Within the last 6 months in West Philly and sections of my district, there have been many instances of crime right on those same corridors within 15 to 30 feet of these said nuisance businesses. There have been 2 shootings and 7 robberies on Haverford Avenue, a business corridor. On City Avenue, 1 shooting and 4 robberies on a commercial corridor. On Lancaster Avenue, 17 robberies. In Manayunk section, and where these businesses are, we had 7 robberies. On 24th, between 24th and 34th and Allegheny, 3 aggravated assaults, 5 robberies, and because of the cameras, no shootings. It is important to understand that there is a yin to this yang, and that if we don't take these steps, it's almost like, you know, why do we clean up? Because we don't want people to think that it is an abandoned territory where there's a lawless land. You take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Can I ask a question? The 22nd Street Business Corridor, what are the boundaries of that corridor?
It is from 22nd in Allegheny down to 22nd in Lehigh.
Okay.
And so it's a 5-block area.
Got it. Thank you. And are there any other questions? No? Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone else wanting to testify on 160115?
They signed up. Huh? They signed up. They don't have to, but
You can come forward.
yes, them all to come forward.
Yeah, everybody can come forward at the same time. We'll try to keep it brief because it sounds like everybody's in favor of this.
Yeah.
Please state your, come on, everyone who wants to testify, come on up, and we'll try to keep it as brief as possible, but please state your name for the record.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Eric Bryce. I'm with the 35th District Town Watch. The 35th Police District extends from Cheltenham Avenue to Roosevelt Boulevard, from Tacony Creek all the way to Worcester, and upper north section of Philadelphia. First of all, welcome. And thank you for letting me come, council members, Councilwoman Bass. I just got this piece of information about this bill this morning, and I had to do a quick study real quick, but nuisance properties, especially businesses, are something that's close to my heart in terms of our organization, our community organization. We are constantly hearing complaints about nuisance businesses that don't feel as though they have a significant investment in our community. They just want to come in, do their business and leave our communities, and they don't really care about what our investment is. I support this bill. I hope it is enforced to the measure that it's described, because the problem is when you have good pieces of legislation that's not timely enforced, it sort of just defeats the purpose, okay? I looked at the timelines for compliance. I think they could be tweaked a little bit in my opinion, because I wish the commissioner was still here, because I'd like to ask him how is he going to enforce this legislation, because L&I is overwhelmed, that we hear all the time, because we always get L&I complaints. The other thing I like to express is the lack of community input in the legislation. The communities are the ones that are impacted by these nuisance businesses, and some of the things that they do, the community needs to have involvement, needs to have a say in making sure that they comply with this really good piece of legislation. So I support it wholeheartedly, and I just hope that more good legislation comes from City Council, and I know more good legislation is coming from Cindy Bass, because she's just getting started.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Okay.
Yeah. Will everybody else come up to the front table, please, here, who wants to testify? We'll try to keep this within 60 seconds if we can.
You got it. Good job. My name is Tanya Ba, and I'm a parent, community member, and taxpayer. And I support Bill 160115, and specifically the authority to address nuisance properties. And I appreciate Cindy Bass, our councilperson, for listening to our community. It is literally impossible to roll a wheelchair for my special needs teen across the snow. And some of the nuisance properties that we have are nuisance properties not just because of the stop and go, the shot glasses that are allowed to be purchased of liquor on Broad Street between the Broad and Olney corridor, but because it is difficult as a pedestrian to walk on ice, to walk on snow, to wheel a wheelchair across it. And when the nuisance properties, and that's what they are when they're not responsible business operations, choose not to adhere to the needs of the community, there needs to be somebody that steps up, and authority needs to be given. And time is of the essence. I appreciate what Eric Bryce said, because I can't go another winter trying to wheel my son out into the street because the local Sneaker Villa or whatever that store is chooses not to remove the snow. In addition to that, just blocks, not blocks, but buildings down from that, my daughter has to pass the stop and go to get the subway. And she's been accosted on one occasion, and this is from people coming out of the stop and go that are publicly drunk. There is shots that are sold during the school hours. And this is something that the 35th Police District Department cannot oversee while they're taking care of the other crimes that are going on in our 35th Police District. So we do need this to be considered timely. This needs to be considered timely. And I support it, and I appreciate that you're listening to it. And I appreciate Councilman Curtis Jones, and specifically Cindy Bass, for everything that you're doing around this bill.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have any questions for me?
Any questions? No, we're good.
Good afternoon.
Please identify yourself for the record.
Okay. My name is Lucia Esther, and I'm chair of the West Poughton-Saunders Park RCO.
Could you repeat that again?
Lucia, L-U-C-I-A, Esther, E-S-T-H-E-R, and I'm chair of West Poughton-Saunders Park RCO. And thank you very much for working on this legislation. We appreciate it very much, and we appreciate your efforts. We would just like to somehow have the community input, maybe through the RCO, so that when we have these nuisances, we can identify them, call into a particular place where we can register the complaints, and then have a return reply of what action was taken. And we did turn in a statement, but it was in reply to the pink pages, so we'll take the new one home and read it.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Chuck Bodie. I'm also with the West Poughton-Saunders Park RCO, and I have 2 points to make. The first is for the record. The original bill had requirements for RCOs. The Planning Commission is having at this very same time a meeting changing all the rules for RCOs. So most of the RCOs that might otherwise be here testifying are at the Planning Commission. We think that should be on the record. My main point concerns, I guess we might say, the scope and the reach of the bill. And I will cite 40th and Market Street to explain. For much of the day, 40th and Market Street is an open-air drug market, loitering the whole bit. However, none of the businesses near 40th and Market are the cause of the problem. The problem extends back onto the SEPTA Route 40 bus, and perhaps SEPTA property might be, or buses are included in the bill. The offending business is a drug treatment center on Parkside Avenue over a mile away, which concentrates these people, gives them their whatever drugs, which then take on the bus and stand at 40th and Market and sell So we think there needs to be a connection between the business and the problem, and even if the business and the problem are not adjacent, the proper business should be held accountable for the problem that they are causing. Somehow, this drug center on Parkside Avenue needs to be accountable for the problem on Market Street and not some innocent business. There are, grocery stores and things there. So we would like to see if there's some way the bill can address a connection between the problem and the causing business. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to let Councilman Jones speak.
I'll yield. If you want to go, I'll get him.
Councilwoman Bass?
Which one? How you want to do this?
Oh, Councilwoman Bass, other Councilman.
Well, I wanted to address something that came up earlier, so if you want to address that specifically. But let me just say one thing first, because there's a lot of concern about the lack of community participation. And so there's two things I want to mention. Number one, originally it did include RCOs, the bill did include RCOs, but now all RCOs are not created equally. And so with that in mind, in terms of the different levels of organization and ability that different RCOs have, one of the things that we thought would be a better remedy than having RCOs is section, actually, I'm not sure what section it is, but section 9-4404, number 4, which states that any person or organization with knowledge regarding nuisance behavior pertaining to the business or purported remedial measures of the owners may submit written information regarding such behavior or efforts to the department for its consideration at the administrative review proceeding. So we don't want folks to think that the community is shut out of the process, and it's quite to the contrary. We welcome having input from folks from the neighborhood who know what's going on, who know what's happening, and we really want the community to be involved and engaged in what's happening in their neighborhood. So, but this is we thought the most appropriate way to do that. And listen, if we find that this is not working, we certainly are open to coming back and revisiting this issue in the future, and the proper way to address contact regarding what's happening in your neighborhood with these businesses. So
thank you,
we appreciate that particular change, though, to remove the RCOs. We appreciate that change.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The Chair would like to recognize Councilman Jones.
I'm going to thank my colleague again for letting me calm down while you gave yours, because, and I'm going to say it calmly, because everybody, I think, is well-intentioned and good and well-meaning in this. What do you base your statistic on that the drug sales are attributable to the Parkside Avenue Recovery Center? How many arrests came from members that came from that facility?
I don't know how many arrests, but I have to ride the Route 40 bus. I have to deal with those people at the bus. Those people? The people from the drug center up at the...
So when you say those people, you're talking about the people who are recovering?
Whatever you
And they're then responsible for the drug transactions at 40th Street?
Yes, so they come down on the bus.
And you're saying none of the businesses, not the bar that's down there, right? Because I'm good in every hood. Like, so not just from 9 to 5, from 5 to whenever?
It's during the day. They come down in the day, starting in the morning.
You are doing the Donald Trump to me by saying those people, and you're saying that you know somehow statistically where they come from when you don't. When you suppose, you surmise, you are guessing. And what I would caution you, sir, is that you don't know, don't say that. You don't know where they come from. There's no census you took that said 22.5% of those people come from that recovery center. So you're speculating as to that nature. So don't do that. And so I do agree with you that you can't, the imperfect shouldn't be the enemy of the good. There's somebody will Google me and tell me what the proper quote is, but you're now crossing over into stereotype. And what I'm saying is, I don't care where they come from. They could come from Chestnut Hill, they could come from recovery. Whoever's doing bad things, we want to stop them. And we want to make it so that everyone can go to whatever store in whatever neighborhood in whatever zip code they can. And I think Councilwoman Bass's legislation moves that needle in the right direction. But when you start saying where people come from, what they look like, who they bees with, gives me pause. because you're not an authority, sir. And I can just tell you that unless, so when I made statements about the crime statistics, my staff researched it from the police departments who gave me accurate, factual information. I did not say where they came from, because guess what? In my district, guess where some of the customers come from? Suburbs. They come from the suburbs, nowhere to go. I can give you several locations, nowhere to hook up, nowhere, and the police are all on it. And I don't make stereotypical comments about those people. I talk about the problem. So I caution you, sir, don't say where they come from unless you are factual.
What we're saying is when this process is resolved with the city authorities who would investigate it, they should find out where the problem originates and take the action against the business where it originates, and it may not be at the corner at hand, and therefore the responsible business, which may be some distance away, should be the ones which the legislation applies to. That's the point I'm trying to make, is it may not be people on the corner, business on the corner, it may be people on the corner concentrated by someplace else, and the proper investigation process would find that in the course of this, and that the bill might be expanded to allow that it's not adjacent, if you will. That's the point I'm trying to make.
In this wonderful country, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but they're not entitled to the facts. When you bring the facts, that helps shape our opinion, right, which creates a law. So, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Let's move on to the next person.
Hi, my name is Emily Doley. I'm a longtime resident of the unit block of West Rockland Street in Germantown, and I am also the current commercial corridor manager for Germantown United CDC. I quickly want to express support for the amended bill number 160115. I have, in my years of work in Germantown, both residing there and for my employment, seen how a strategic effort around a problematic business can gain results. But it often takes a monumental effort, and that is not sustainable, especially in communities that do not have as much organizational capacity as others. So this proposed amended bill really has the potential to be high functioning and a benefit both for residents and the business community. A neighborhood like Germantown as well also has the potential to really reap these benefits because we have a heavy residential community within the immediate vicinity of our business district, since Germantown Avenue extends end to end throughout the entire neighborhood. Lastly, I would like to add that too often when a business has multiple violations issued from different city agencies, there is not adequate communication between departments to address chronic nuisance businesses, which is why we're here today, really. This bill would require improved interagency communication, which we all know the city as a whole will benefit from. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Rowe. I'm the president of the Baltimore Avenue Business Association and a member of the board on the Lancaster Avenue 21st Century Business Association and the owner of a small chain of board game stores called Red Cap's Corner. I wanted to thank Councilwoman Bass and the rest of the City Council for addressing this important issue that affects businesses across Philadelphia. Unfortunately, as written, the organizations I represent cannot support Bill number 160115. I don't think there's any debating the spirit of the bill, and I appreciate the inclusion of language in the revision that specifies the businesses must be open to bear responsibility. But the bill is too sweeping and open-ended, I think, to be enforced any way other than selectively, and to target the businesses that are really the problem. I can't support a bill that leaves me 3 bags of Cheetos away from losing my business license. If I happen to not notice litter, the fact that I could lose my business license for things that are beyond my control is something I'm just not capable of supporting. And I am also a little disappointed. You addressed the removal of RCOs from the direct process, but I'm a little disappointed to see that they're not getting more inclusion in the final bill. That's all I have to say on it.
Okay, thank you. Before we continue, if there's anyone else who wants to testify on this bill? Okay, thank you.
Good day, gentlemen, councilpersons. My name is Charles Karn. I'm the 13th Ward Chairperson, Ward Leader Regency Youngblood. I want to thank my councilperson, Bass here, and her terrific staff for taking my calls. The nuisance bills, let me take it a little bit farther than 22nd Street. I go all the way up to Germantown Avenue, to Broad Street, to 22nd and Wissahickon. We do have those nuisance businesses, and we do contact the 39th Precinct. I think one of the loopholes that we're having expanded to, we talked about communication between the agencies. I've talked to L&I. We've actually had a meeting with Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board. When we have enough of these meetings, enough of these citations, enough of these violations, I think those type of communication need to be extended out of the city, and at least a letter going to the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, and I'm talking about the stop and goes now specifically, that they know what's going on. Now, everybody came down here from the Harrisburg and the different offices. We have too many loopholes in the fact that the folks can get away with what they're getting away with right now. Now, I drive around, and if you accept my invitation to drive through 22nd Street between Lehigh Avenue and Allegheny Avenue, I think you have a different perspective of what's happening in our community. Just drive that drive Saturday afternoon, and we have more stop and goes in our particular area than any other part of the city. Forget Chestnut Hill, they don't have them. Manioc doesn't have them. I'm just saying specifically what we have in our community that's creating a negative effect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Wayne Jacobs, and I'm a committee person in the 11th Ward, in the 2nd Division. I have a problem with the stop and go at 22nd and Cambria, where I have took pictures of children hanging out in the stop and go where they're serving alcohol. You know, just wanted to show y'all these pictures to verify that this is what's going on, and that I know a lot of people make complaints, but they very seldom document it. Well, I documented my complaint, and I would like to show it to y'all. Just enter it as record.
We can submit them as part of the record if you'd like.
All right, just to end the fact that, one, I support 160115, and that my reason for that is because of the activity that is going on at the stop and goes in reference to 22nd and Cambria, where I had took a series of pictures 3 different times of children hanging out in the stop and go. So I just wanted to register that complaint, you know, and moving on.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Are there any other questions, comments on this 160015, 160115? All right, we move on to the next bill.
No, I have a...
So I'm sorry.
No.
Councilman Tallenberger wants to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the light of one particular testimony that was just given, I like the intent of the bill. I think it's a very, very, very good bill. But I see some danger there in what was just said. Not just said, but said some time back, the term, those people. I don't like that kind of language. It's offensive to me. I'd like to say that the intent of the bill is great, but I also want to make sure, and saying this on the record, that no minority business or group of business is suspect and all of a sudden put on the forefront when they oughtn't to be. There are a lot of factors in bad businesses, some of which is very, 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 very much the owner's responsibility. But to have generally things said like what was said earlier, I think is wrong, and it puts up a red flag in my book on what could happen in the future. So I have to say, I'm going to continue to look at that kind of stuff, and I thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, clerk, read the next bill.
Bill number 160249. An ordinance amending Section 9-3908 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Notification of License Obligation by adding a requirement for the city to provide an explanation of the license requirements for vacant properties, all under certain terms and conditions.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Dom and members of the Committee on Licenses and Inspections. My name is Rebecca Swanson. I'm the Planning Director for the Department of Licenses and Inspections. Today, I'm here to provide testimony on Bill Number 160249, which, if enacted, will amend Title IX of the Philadelphia Code by adding a requirement that the city provide an explanation of license requirements for vacant properties to property certificates. The department issues certificates to property owners indicating the zoning classification and the legality of the existing use of a property about to be sold. Section 9-3908 of the Philadelphia Code requires that the certificate contain language summarizing the owner's responsibilities under Title IX and under the Property Maintenance Code, which include obtaining any and all relevant licenses for the property. Currently, this section specifies that the certificate must contain language explaining that an owner must obtain a rental license if the property will be offered for rent. This bill would add to the certificate similar specificity around vacant property license requirements. It would require that the certificate contain language explaining that an owner of a vacant property must obtain a vacant property license. The department supports this bill and is prepared to enforce its provisions should it become law. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the department's testimony. Happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Is there anyone else in the audience who wants to testify on this bill? Thank you very much. Can we go on to the next bill? 160303.
Bill number 160303, an ordinance amending Section 9-703 of the Philadelphia Code entitled the Special Assembly Occupancies by further providing for types of activities to be regulated and by altering the fees and requirements for its Special Assembly Occupancy License, and amending Title IV, Subcode B, the Philadelphia Building Code, and Subcode F, the Philadelphia Fire Code of the Philadelphia Code, to conform a definition all under certain terms and conditions.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Dom and members of the Committee on Licenses and Inspections. My name is Rebecca Swanson. I am the Planning Director for the Department of L&I. Today, I am here to provide testimony on Bill Number 160303, which, if enacted, will amend the Philadelphia Building Code and the Philadelphia Fire Code to alter some requirements for a Special Assembly Occupancy License. Special Assembly occupancies, which include bars, nightclubs, and other establishments that regularly host more than 50 patrons for social entertainment purposes, are required to obtain a separate license in order to trigger an inspection by L&I. This inspection is necessary in order to ensure that the building hosting a Special Assembly occupancy is safe. Specifically, that it meets all Fire Code and Property Maintenance Code requirements necessary to protect the safety of the occupants, particularly in case of an emergency. Many Special Assembly occupancies host traditional entertainment such as live music or DJs. As current technologies grow and improve, however, new forms of entertainment are emerging. Specifically, some of these occupancies are now using streaming or recorded audio and video for entertainment purposes. In the current code, establishments that host live music must obtain a Special Assembly license, while identical establishments that require the same level of safety oversight, but that present streaming or recorded audio or video instead of live music, are exempted from the license requirement. This bill closes that loophole and requires all establishments that operate as a Special Assembly occupancy obtain a Special Assembly license, no matter how they play their music. In addition, the bill also makes Special Assembly licenses renewable every 2 years instead of every year. The cost of the license essentially remains the same. The department supports this bill and is prepared to enforce its provisions should it become law. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the department's testimony. Happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any other questions from my colleagues? Is there anyone else here who wishes to testify on this bill? I'm learning how to do this. Thank you very much. Yeah, you know. Will the clerk read the next bill, 160365, I guess?
Bill number 160365, an ordinance amending subcodes A and PM of Title IV of the Philadelphia Code, the Philadelphia Administrative Code, and the Philadelphia Property Maintenance Code by establishing a separate offense for certain chronic, non-compliant violators of the Property Maintenance Code, all under certain terms and conditions.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Dom and members of the Committee on Licenses and Inspections. My name is Rebecca Swanson. I'm the Planning Director for L&I. Today, I'm here to provide testimony on Bill Number 160365 as proposed to be amended, which, if enacted, will amend the Philadelphia Administrative Code and the Philadelphia Property Maintenance Code by establishing a separate offense and penalty for certain property owners whose properties are repeatedly in violation of the Property Maintenance Code. The department has identified a problem with certain properties being repeatedly found to be in violation of the Property Maintenance Code. These properties typically have multiple violations related to the exterior of the property, including trash, high weeds, infestation, drainage problems, deteriorated porches, and other blighting issues that have a negative impact on the surrounding community, and that are not complied by the property owner in a timely fashion. As a result, these properties drain a disproportionate amount of the department's resources through the need for repeated inspections and frequent court proceedings. This bill would provide the department with an additional tool to combat this persistent problem and hold the owners of these chronically non-compliant properties accountable. The bill would allow the department to issue a separate property maintenance code violation, specifically addressing the fact that a property has been found to be in violation of certain other provisions of the property maintenance code multiple times while under the control of the same owner. Under this bill, if the department issues 2 or more code violation notices or notices of violation for exterior violations under the property maintenance code to the property owner in the span of 2 years, and those violations are not corrected by the property owner in a timely fashion, the department is authorized to declare the property a chronic non-compliant owner and issue this additional violation. The chronic non-compliant owner violation carries with it a $150 fine, in addition to any other fines levied as a result of the underlying property maintenance code violations. The department believes that this violation and associated penalty may serve as a deterrent to property owners who are seeking to avoid the label of a chronically non-compliant owner, and may provide the department's attorneys with additional evidence in court proceedings against the owners. The department supports this bill and is prepared to enforce its provisions should it become law. That concludes my testimony on Bill Number 160365. Happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Any questions? I actually have a question for you on this one. I just want to make sure I understand it. If I own a property and I have a violation that I'm not aware of, and then I fix it within 30 days, it still counts against me in this bill?
No, it would not. It's for ones who are not complied to the point where it starts court proceedings.
All right, okay. So if you flag something and I fix it and it happens to me 3 times in a year, that's not counted against me?
That would not count.
Okay.
Because those cases would be complied. We're looking for open cases.
Right. Okay. Because I may have some, I don't know.
Yeah. No,
All right, well, thank you.
we understand that can happen, but as long as, I think that's why we added language that it must be complied if it's corrected by the property owner.
Okay.
Not by the city, but by the property owner.
So this is for people who are blatantly in violation, who don't conform, and we've pointed it out, and they just ignore us.
Yes, pretty much.
Basically. Okay, and any questions? Not you. Let me write. Anyone else want to testify in this bill? Yes, okay.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Christine Young-Gertz. I'm the Government Affairs Director of the Pennsylvania Apartment Association. I submitted some written testimony, but I confess I submitted it a bit late, so I'll take a second to read it into the record. We really appreciate this opportunity. The Pennsylvania Apartment Association is in accord with the spirit and the intent of this bill, but we're concerned with its current language, and actually the proposed language for amendment, and the possibility for unintentional consequences. We do appreciate the discussions we've had with staff of the sponsors of this bill and our opportunities to express our concerns. Large multifamily rental properties that are managed according to the highest property maintenance standards could still, under this bill, potentially receive 2 or more citations for relatively minor, unrelated code violations over the course of 2 years. Responsible property managers could swiftly correct those violations and still, according to this bill, be unfairly labeled as chronic violators. The stated purpose of the city's property maintenance code to ensure public health, safety, and welfare will not be furthered by unjustly labeling responsible property owners who provide quality rental housing to Philadelphians and correct all problems in a timely manner. It wouldn't help at all to label them as chronic violators of the code. The proposed penalties for chronic non-compliant owners are significant, and therefore a chronic violator should only be considered as an owner who repeatedly ignores serious property maintenance issues and fails to correct those violations in a timely manner, as distinguished from the conscientious owner who routinely corrects problems and makes timely repairs. And my reading of the proposed language, I believe, still is pretty, I think the language is still pretty broad and might ensnare responsible owners. For example, if a violation was issued 24 months ago and corrected 23 and a half months ago, a separate violation of a different code provision occurring 3 days ago can't possibly be considered a subsequent violation, nor, in my opinion, can the owner be considered a chronic violator, as I think this bill would still label them. Chronic violations should be considered serious violations of the same code provision that have not been corrected in the time for compliance as stated on the notices of violation. And once a violation has been addressed, the count of violations in terms of going forward to labeling somebody a chronic violator, the count ought to be reset if the violation is corrected in a timely manner. And a written statement to that effect should be issued to the property owner. So we respectfully request the bill be amended to define a chronic non-compliant owner as one who commits a serious violation of the code provision listed in a residential property after having been provided notice of prior violations of the same code violations on 3 or more occasions in the past 2 years, and who fails to correct them, respectfully. As I say, we are in accord with the spirit and intent. We have no wish to stand in the way of the city of cracking down on serious violations and property owners who flaunt the law, but we don't wish to have any responsible property owner ensnared in the label of chronic violator. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair would like to recognize Councilman Greenlee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I believe the questions the chairman asked of Ms. Swanson addressed a lot of what you were saying. These are open violations that the people do not clear up in a timely manner. Am I right, Ms. Swanson?
That is correct. Yeah. Violations that we must take to court or that the city must abate.
So if the property owner left it going that long, with all due respect, they're probably not responsible property owners. If a property owner gets a violation, they clear it up right away. They're not in this world that we're talking about here. We're talking about people who leave stuff go. You said something about a person that got a violation 24 months ago and cleaned it up 23 months ago. Well, that's not, am I right, Ms. Swanson? That's not what we're talking about here.
That is
correct.
We're
talking about somebody that got a violation 24 months ago, didn't clean up till last month. That's a problem, because by that time it had gone through the system and gone to court. Well, so if somebody gets a violation, they clean up right away, they're not considered in this legislation at all. Ms. Swanson, can you verify that?
That is absolutely correct, Councilman.
Well, I appreciate that, and at a minimum, perhaps the language could be tweaked to make that absolutely clear. My reading of it did not bring that
I think
forward.
It was clear to everybody else, in all due respect. And,
well, it says,
I think when the department goes on record saying it, they're the ones going to be enforcing it.
Any person who violates any provision of the PM code designated in this section, et cetera, with respect to a residential property, after having violated any of such provisions and having received notice of such violations on 2 or more occasions, et I'm sorry if I missed the part about it being adjudicated in a court of law.
Well, if you've received it in connection with those violations, and you've received more than 2 violations, that means it is headed to court. Am I right on that violation?
That is correct.
That's what that means. So you received 2 violations. You received a violation, you ignored it. You received a second violation, you ignored it on that same problem, the specific problem. And then you're considered chronic. Not if you get a violation, you fix it, you're not included, and you're not considered chronic if you fix the problem.
Well, again, I appreciate your reading of it. It seems to me, though, perhaps it should be tweaked to absolutely make clear that it's been adjudicated and someone has been found guilty of that. They did not correct it within the time required in the citation. Perhaps some language like that could be put in and make it absolutely clear.
I guess it can be raised with, I think Councilman Heenan's the main sponsor, that can be raised with him, but I think by the department going on record what the issue is, I think that clears up any questions, in my opinion, anyway. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? Anyone else? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else want to testify on this bill? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes the public hearing. We'll go into a public meeting.
That completes our public hearing. We're going to go into a public meeting. How's that?
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Chair recognizes Councilmember Greenlee for a motion on the amendment to bill number...
No, just on amendments. On amendments to both.
Which ones?
Just amendments.
Okay. Chair recognizes Councilman Greenlee for a motion on the amendments from today.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By the way, you did an excellent job.
Yeah, I was finished.
Mr. Chairman, I move the adoption of the amendments to bill numbers 160-115 and 160-365.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 160-115 and 160-365 as amended be adopted.
No, the amendments, you're moving that the amendments be adopted.
Moving that the amendments to the bill be adopted. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries and the amendments are adopted for 16115 and 160-365.
Just come forward, what I say.
Chair would like to recognize Councilman Greenlee for a motion on all the bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the following bills be reported out of this committee with favorable recommendation and that the rules of council be suspended to allow for all of them to be have our first reading in next session of council. Bill numbers 160-115 as amended, 160-468, 160-469, 160-249, 160-303, and 160-365 as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? Yeah. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those bills are passed.
Bills are reported as committee with favorable recommendation with a rule suspension.
Those bills are reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation with the rule suspension.
That completes our public meeting.
That completes our public meeting, and I will say it's easier to sell real estate than to
Good job. It's an acquired taste.
You make more money at it too, but that's another.